Well, gentlemen, thank you for a terrific start to this debate. The time has now come to involve you, the audience, here at Roy Thompson Hall. Those written questions have been coming in, and some have been passed on to me and our folks in the control room. Also, we're going to bring on our online audience through questions that have been debated on our discussion boards, and I'm going to take some live questions from some younger audience members here on the stage. And in that regard, Kiristofer, we're going to start with a question from you. It's a young woman right here who would like to address you personally. Tell the audience your name and your question, please.
Hi, my name is Megha Wadwani.
Just hold on a sec. We're going to get this microphone working.
Okay.
Is this microphone working? Try again.
Hello?
You got it.
Okay. My name is Megha Wadwani. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Toronto. And my question is actually in regards to globalization. This century, globalization will bring together, as never before, nations and peoples divided by wealth, geography, politics, and race. So my question is, instead of fearing faith, why not embrace the shared values of the world's major religions as a way of uniting humankind?
Great question. Kiristofer?
Yeah, well,
unity out of faith? Or disunity?
Perfectly good question, but seemed to be phrased as a call for a common humanism. I mean, I didn't hear anyone say, wouldn't it be better if everyone at least joined some church or other? Not a bit of it. I mean, common humanism is, I think, not made particularly easier by the practice of religion, and I'll tell you why. There's something about religion that is, very often at any rate, and in its original monotheistic Judaistic form, actually is ab initio an expression of exclusivism. This is our God. This is the God who's made a covenant with our tribe. You find it all over the place. It isn't always as sectarian as fundamentalist Judaism was, and sometimes still is, but it's not unknown. I mean, it's always struck me as slightly absurd to be a special church for English people, though I can sort of see the point. It strikes me as positively sinister that Pope Benedict should want to restore the Catholic Church to the claim it used to make, which is that it is the one true church, and that all other forms of Christianity are, as he still puts it, defective and inadequate. How this helps to build your future world of cooperation and understanding is not known to me. If you tell me in the Balkans what your religion is, I can tell you what your nationality is. You're not a Catholic. You know less about Loyola than I do, but I know you're a Croat, and I know you're a Croat nationalist. It's a religion, and in fact, any form of faith, because it is a surrender of reason, it's a surrender of reason in favor of faith, is a fantastic force multiplier, a tremendous intensifier, I was trying to say, of all things that are in fact divisive rather than inclusive, and that's why its history is so stained with blood, not just of crimes against humanity, crimes against womanhood, crimes against reason and science, attacks upon medicine and enlightenment, all these appalling things that Tony kept defending himself from that I didn't even have time to bring up. But if you just look at the way the Christians love each other in the wars of religion in Lebanon, or in former Yugoslavia, you will see that there is no conceivable way that by calling on the supernatural you will achieve anything like your objective of a common humanism, which is, I think you're quite right to say, our only chance of, I won't call it salvation. Thank you.
Now, Tony, what I'd like you to do, there's another question on the stage. Someone, in a sense, has the inverse question for you, and it'd be a great opportunity for you to respond to Hichens at the same time. So let me go to Emily Padden, a Trudeau scholar at Oxford University, who has a question for you, Mr. Blair.
Thank you very much. My research is in armed conflict in sub-Saharan Africa, and so the question I'd like to ask you, Mr. Blair, if I may, is how do you argue that religion is a force for good in the world when the same faiths that bind peoples and groups also deepen divisions and exacerbate conflict?
Great question.
To which my answer is that they can do, and there are very many examples of that. But there are also examples, let me give you one from the Northern Ireland peace process, where in the end, actually, people from Protestant Catholic churches got together And actually the religious leaders of those two churches tried to bring about a situation where people reached out across the faith divide. And so what I would say to you is that this exclusivism is not, this type of excluding other people because they're different. Let's just nail the myth that this is solely the prerogative of religion. I'm afraid this happens in many, many different walks of life. It's not what true religion is about. True religion is not about excluding somebody because they're different. True religion is actually about embracing someone who is different. That is why, in every major religion, this concept of love of neighbor, and Christopher's absolutely right. Confucius did indeed say exactly something similar to Rabbi Hillel. Of course, Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. If you look at Hinduism, Buddhism, the religion of Islam, after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, Islam was actually at the forefront of science, was at the forefront of introducing proper rights for women for the first time in that part of the world. So the point is this, and this is really where the debate comes to. Christopher says, well, humanism is enough. And what I say to that is, but for some people of faith, it isn't enough. They actually believe that there is indeed a different and higher power simply than humanity. And that is not about them thinking of heaven and hell in some sort of old-fashioned sense of trying to terrorize people into submission to religion. They actually think of it as about how you fulfill your purpose as a human being in the service of others. And so, when we say, well, that could be done by humanism, yes, it could. But the fact is, for many people, it's driven by faith. And so, yes, it's true, you can find examples of where religion has deepened the divide in countries in sub-Saharan Africa. You can also find examples of where religion has tried to overcome those divides by preaching what is the true message of religion, which is one of human compassion and love.
Hitchens, let's have you come back on that, because not just Northern Ireland, but Iraq, a war that you supported, religion played an important role, arguably, in the success of putting together post-invasion Iraq.
If I only think we should do this because the two questions were in effect the same and both very well phrased. And because I'd never like to miss out a chance to congratulate someone on being humorous, if only unintentionally. It's very touching for Tony to say that he recently went to a meeting that bridged a religious divide in Northern Ireland. Well, where does the religious divide come from? "400 years and more, 400 years more in my own country of birth, of people killing each other's children, depending on what kind of Christian they were, and sending each other's children in rhetoric to hell, and making Northern Ireland the place the most remarkable in Northern Europe for unemployment, for ignorance, for poverty, and for, I would say, stupidity too. And for them now to say, maybe we might consider breaching this gap, well, I should bloody well think so. But I don't see how. If they'd listened to the atheist community in Northern Ireland, which is a real thing, and if they'd listened to the secular movement in Northern Ireland, which is a real thing, and I know many people who've suffered dreadfully from membership in it, not excluding being pulled out of a car by a man in a balaclava and asked, are you Catholic or Protestant? He said, I'm Jewish atheist, actually. He said, what are you, a Protestant Jewish atheist or a Catholic? You laugh. You laugh, but it's not so funny when the party of God has a gun in your ear at the same time. And that was in Britain, and still is to some extent, until recently. Rwanda. Do I say that there would be no quarrel between Hutu and Tutsi, people in Rwanda? Belgian colonialism, I think, made it worse, probably, but there are no doubt innate ethnic differences, or there felt to be in Rwanda. But the fact of the matter is, Rwanda is the most Christian country in Africa. In fact, by one account, that's to say numbers of people in relation to numbers of churches, it's the most Christian country in the world. And the Hutu power genocide, at any rate, was preached from the pulpits, actually the pulpits of the Catholic Church, as many of the people we are still looking for, wanted in that genocide, are hiding in the Vatican, along with a number of other people who should be given up to international justice, by the way. Quite a number of people. So, since Tony seems to like religious people best when they're largely non-practicing, but just basically faithful, I'll grant him that much. I say that it's not entirely the fault of religion that this happened in Rwanda, but when it's preached from the pulpit, as it was in Northern Ireland and in Rwanda, it does tend to make it very, very much worse. Thank you.
Tony, just briefly come back on that, because you were intimately involved in the search for peace in Northern Ireland, and I assume you had a very different perspective of the role that faith played in the resolution of that conflict.
Yeah, and I work now, do work in Rwanda. Look, first of all, I think it really would be bizarre to say that the conflict in Rwanda was a result of the Catholic Church. I mean, Rwanda is a perfect indicator of what I'm saying, which is you can put aside religion and still have the most terrible things happen. I mean, this was the worst genocide since the Holocaust. It was committed on a tribal basis. Yes, it's true, there were members of the Catholic Church who behaved badly in that context of Rwanda. There were also, by the way, members of the Catholic Church and others of religious denomination who stood up and protected and died alongside people in Rwanda. So, you know, and as for Northern Ireland, yes, of course, Protestant and Catholic, absolutely right, but you couldn't ignore the politics of the situation in Northern Ireland. It was to do with the relationship between Britain and Ireland going back over many, many centuries. So my point is very simple. Of course, religion has played a role, and sometimes a very bad role, in these situations, but not only religion. Yeah. And what is at the heart of this is we wouldn't dream of condemning all of politics, because politics had led to Hitler or Stalin, or indeed what has happened in Rwanda. So let us not condemn the whole of religion, or say that religion, when you look at it as a whole, is a force for bad, because there are examples of where religion has had that impact. And so I think actually Rwanda and Northern Ireland are classic examples, even the Middle East peace process. I mean, yes, I agree you can look at all the religious issues there, but let's not ignore the political issues either. And frankly, at the moment, the reason, and I can tell you this from first-hand experience, the reason we don't have an agreement at the moment between Palestinians and Israelis is not to do with the religious leaders on either side, right? It's a lot more to do with the political leaders, so it's my branch that has to take the blame for that. And therefore, what I would say is, I actually think that yes, of course, a lot of these conflicts have religious roots. I actually think it's possible for religious leaders to play a positive part in trying to resolve those. But in the end, it's for politics and religion to try and work out a way in which religion, in a world of globalization that is pushing people together, can play a positive rather than negative role. And if we concentrated on that, rather than trying to drive religion out, which is futile, but concentrate instead on how we actually get people of different faiths working together, learning from each other and living with each other, I think it would be a more productive mission. Thank you.
Okay, let's question.